In the year 1347, ships arrived in Europe carrying something far worse than cargo. Within weeks, entire cities were silent, streets were filled with corpse, and no one understood why. This is the true story of the Black Death, the deadliest pandemic in human history. The job offer you should have turned down. So, you're a semi-educated person in Europe, maybe with a background in medicine, read astrology and leeches, and the city hires you as a plague doctor. Congratulations! Let's say you're in Florence or Venice, or maybe a smaller but equally terrified city like Avignon. There's a new wave of plague sweeping in from the east, and people are dying by the hundreds, then the thousands. Everyone's in a panic. The city council, in a last-ditch effort to look like they're doing something productive, scrapes together what little money it has left and posts a job listing. Wanted. Doctor willing to handle and examine plague victims. Must not fear death or bodily fluids. Smelling herbs provided. You respond. Maybe you're desperate. Maybe you genuinely want to help. Maybe you think this is your shot at glory, a chance to be remembered in the annals of medical history. Or maybe you're broke. Probably the last one. You arrive in the city and you're told that your duties include visiting infected households, examining bodies for plague symptoms, keeping track of death tolls, and advising on quarantine zones. Basically, you're the medieval version of an overworked health inspector and Grim Reaper hybrid. The pay? Usually garbage. Sometimes you got paid in food or housing or, hilariously, exposure. Some cities promised high wages, if you survived, which, spoiler alert, you probably didn't. Contracts were drawn up saying things like, upon the successful completion of services during the plague outbreak, the doctor shall receive 30 florins, a room in the city walls, and, should he survive, a loaf of bread weekly until his retirement or death. But the city officials weren't fools. They often withheld payment until the plague had ended. So either you died first, or the city ran out of money, or both. There are records of plague doctors' families suing municipalities decades later for unpaid wages. One guy in Marseille worked through the entire epidemic, only to be stiffed on his last 2 months' salary when the town council blamed him for failing to stop the spread. And then there's the contract loophole. You were hired at risk, meaning if you died, your family got nothing. No pension, no funeral, just your wax-covered corpse left in a roadside dish. Oh, and here's a fun kicker. Even though you were a doctor, the people you treated hated you. More on that later. So now you're standing in the city square, contract in hand, trying to remember if this was really better than selling pies or teaching Latin. The city gates are closed. The streets are oddly quiet. You hear coughing from the shadows. Your stick is trembling in your gloved hand. This is your life now. Welcome to the worst job in Europe.
Let's talk about the fit. The plague doctor outfit was like if Hot Topic got possessed by a Renaissance ghost. Long wax coat, leather gloves, wide-brimmed hat, cane for poking things, and that iconic bird beak mask. The beak wasn't for style, though it did slay in its own right. It was stuffed with herbs, spices, and sometimes vinegar-soaked cloth, all based on the idea that bad air caused disease. Miasma theory, baby. Germs? Never heard of them. You see, medical science back then operated under the belief that plague was spread through foul smells, literally bad air or miasma. So if you could mask the stink, maybe you could block the plague from entering your body. The beak served as a primitive respirator. Imagine trying to survive a pandemic with a scented candle shoved up your nose. Same energy. The coat? Made of heavy wax-coated fabric or leather, meant to be impenetrable to liquids. In theory, nothing could get through. In practice, it turned you into a walking oven. Medieval summers were no joke, and inside that outfit, you were basically slow roasting. Some doctors fainted from heat exhaustion, others simply stewed in their own sweat until the smell inside their suit rivaled the stench outside. And don't forget the hat. The broad-brimmed chapeau was supposed to signify that you were a man of science. It also conveniently helped keep rain, bodily fluids, and the occasional flying rat from landing directly on your scalp. The gloves were long and tight, meant to prevent skin contact with infected people. In reality, they made it difficult to hold your stick or tools, and most doctors had to remove them multiple times a day, thereby defeating the whole purpose. Then there was the staff, or cane.
This wasn't just for show. It had multiple uses. Pointing at things from a distance, prodding corpses, pushing open doors, measuring buboes, swollen lymph nodes, and sometimes just keeping panicked townsfolk at bay. You became a shadowy figure gliding through the streets like a cursed scarecrow. From a distance, you looked like a monster. Up close, you smelled like one. The outfit offered minimal protection and maximum alienation, and yet it was all you had. Every morning you put it on like armor, hoping it would ward off more than just stink. Fashionable? Absolutely not. Functional? Barely. Iconic? Unfortunately, yes.
Your office is a corpse-stuffed alley.
The workplace. For some, it's a cubicle. For others, a bustling cafe or a home office with a cat walking across the keyboard. But for you, dear Plague Doctor, your office is a narrow, rat-infested alleyway. Or maybe it's a candlelit cellar filled with moaning patients and the metallic tang of blood in the air. Wherever it is, you can be sure it's crawling with fleas, coated in filth, and blessed with the gentle perfume of decomposition. You're not operating in a sanitized environment here. You're stepping over rotting bodies to reach the barely living. Your workplace lacks basic tools like soap, let alone sterile instruments. Instead, your medical kit consists of a stick, maybe a scalpel or two, dull, rusted, some questionable herbs, and possibly a vial of mercury if you're feeling fancy. Mercury, by the way, doesn't cure anything. It just ensures you'll die quicker and shinier. The place is noisy, too. You've got people wailing, coughing, praying, screaming, and sometimes accusing you of spreading the plague. It's not unheard of for plague doctors to be attacked by angry mobs who believe the guy in the terrifying bird mask is a demon, or worse, a government agent. And they might be right about the latter. No privacy either. You're inspecting bodies in the street, you're draining buboes with half a dozen villagers peering over your shoulder. Occasionally, someone tosses a chamber pot out a window, and it lands a little too close. That warm splash isn't rain, my friend. And then there's the wildlife. Fleas, of course, the real carriers of the plague, hitching rides on rats, dogs, and cats. But there are also crows pecking at corpses, rats crawling up your boots, and sometimes pigs wandering around chewing on something disturbingly human-looking. If OSHA existed, they'd burst into flames just reading your job description. But there's no oversight. There's no supervisor, no break room, no HR to complain to, just you, your cane, and a symphony of suffering in your ears. Sleep tight, office worker.
Here's a secret about most plague doctors. They weren't real doctors. Not the went to university, studied anatomy, passed a board exam kind. No, most of them were amateur physicians, failed barber surgeons, or just educated enough men looking to make a desperate buck. Some couldn't even read. Others believed illness was caused by bad astrological alignments or divine punishment for sin. You think that sounds ridiculous? Well, one guy in Paris tried to treat the plague by surrounding patients with sweet-smelling goats. Didn't work. Shocking. You might have taken an oath, maybe even read Hippocrates or Galen, but you weren't saving lives. Most of your time was spent writing death reports, counting infected homes, and occasionally lancing a bubo or two, badly. The medical tools of the day were primitive. You might apply a poultice made of butter and onions, or rub pigeon blood on a patient's chest, maybe even carve a symbol of Mars, the god of war, into their skin to scare off the disease. Was it gruesome? Yes. Was it effective? Absolutely not. People didn't come to you for healing. They came to you to confirm they were dying. And when you said they were, they'd spit at you, or cry, or try to bribe you to falsify your reports so their house wouldn't be sealed shut. But despite your lack of real skill, you were all they had. In a society where most medical advice came from monks or folk healers, your weird bird mask and long coat gave you just enough authority to be feared, but not enough to be respected. You walked a lonely line between con artist and last hope, which is kind of poetic in a tragic sort of way. People hated you, even when you were helping.
You might think wearing a mask and helping sick people would make you a hero.
Wrong. People despised you. For starters, you were the physical embodiment of death.
Seeing you walk down the street meant someone nearby was probably going to die. Children cried, dogs barked, adults turned their backs or made signs to ward off evil. Some accused you of being a plague spreader. They thought you collected the disease in your beak and unleashed it on neighborhoods the government wanted to clean up. Others assumed you were in league with demons. Your outfit didn't help. It looked less like a doctor's uniform and more like something out of a nightmare. Then there was the suspicion. People didn't trust you with their secrets. You might report them as sick and have their entire household boarded up inside, left to rot. Families hid sick relatives from you. Bribes were common. Violence, too. In some cities, you had to travel with armed guards. In others, you worked in silence, pretending not to notice the hatred. You were a grim reminder of mortality, mobile proof that the system was failing. And when the plague passed, nobody thanked you. You were shunned. Your presence was a bad omen. Even if you survived, you might not be allowed back into your own neighborhood. So yes, even when you helped, you were hated. It's hard to be a symbol of hope when you look like the Grim Reaper's intern.
If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell and watch part 2.